I never imagined the moment that would shatter my entire world would begin with something as small as a folded piece of paper slipped under my door. When I picked it up, my hands trembled before I even knew why. I opened it slowly, and as my eyes moved across the lines, my breath caught in my throat. Suddenly, every uneasy feeling, every strange look, every unexplained moment between my husband and my sister clicked together like a puzzle I'd been too afraid to finish. I remember standing there in the hallway, frozen, hearing my own heartbeat louder than anything else. I knew the truth was staring me in the face, but part of me still prayed it wasn't real. If you had asked me years ago, I would have said my sister was the one person I trusted more than anyone. She was my best friend, my confidant, the one who held my hand through every milestone of my life. And when I met the man who would become my husband, she was the first person I introduced him to, excited to share my happiness. Back then, I believed I was building a future filled with love and family, never imagining that the two people I cherished the most would one day become the reason everything fell apart. Yet even while the betrayal was happening, I didn't see it, not clearly. I thought the small changes were stress. I thought their closeness was harmless. I thought love was enough to keep us all steady. Looking back now, the first warning signs were so subtle that I brushed them aside without a second thought. A lingering conversation between them, a laugh that didn't feel quite right. Plans being made without me. Little things that should have meant nothing, yet somehow meant everything. If only I had paid attention sooner. But of course, when you trust people, you don't expect them to be the ones to break you. And that's where my story truly begins. I woke up that morning with a strange heaviness in my chest, the kind that feels like your body knows something your mind hasn't figured out yet. The sunlight was soft, warm even, but it didn't reach the coldness I felt inside. My husband had already left for work, though the way he kissed me goodbye felt off-rushed, distracted, like someone trying to escape instead of someone heading out for the day. At first, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Everyone has tired mornings. Everyone gets distant sometimes. Still, something in his eyes left a bruise on my heart. My sister, who normally sent me a good morning message filled with emojis and jokes, hadn't texted me at all. She wasn't just my sibling. She was my best friend, the one who cheered when I found love and promised to help me build a life filled with joy. So her silence felt strange, like a note out of tune in a familiar song. Later that afternoon, I noticed her jacket draped across the couch light beige, the one she wore everywhere. But she hadn't told me she stopped by. She always told me when she visited. It was our thing. I picked up the jacket gently, feeling the fabric between my fingers as a chill crawled down my spine. Something was wrong. When my hand slipped into the pocket, I felt a folded piece of paper. My heart thudded like a drum as I pulled it out, hesitating before opening it. I didn't know it yet, but this tiny, accidental discovery would be the first thread in a tapestry of betrayal waiting to unravel. At that moment, I stood still, the world quiet around me, unaware that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I sat down slowly, clutching the folded paper as if it were a fragile truth that might shatter if I breathed too hard. For a long moment, I simply looked at it, my chest rising and falling with uncertain breaths. My mind ran through harmless explanations, maybe a receipt, maybe a note for me, maybe something related to her work. Anything normal. Anything comforting. But the weight in my stomach told me otherwise. Finally, with trembling fingers, I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, looping and familiar, the same handwriting used in birthday cards and supportive notes throughout my life. But this wasn't a card, and the words weren't supportive. It wasn't obvious at first glance, just a short message, a meeting time, a heart drawn at the end. It didn't say a name, but the tone. The tone felt intimate. Too intimate. My heartbeat quickened. Why was she meeting someone secretly? And why leave this in her jacket pocket on my couch? I tried to calm myself. Sisters have private lives. They meet people. They don't owe me every explanation. But something about the message stuck to my ribs like ice. I read it again and again. Each time my mind connected dots I didn't want to see. Then I noticed the date, the time, the place. And suddenly, my breath froze. That was the same evening my husband told me he was working late. My heart dropped so hard I felt dizzy. It could have been coincidence. It could have been a misunderstanding. Yet deep inside, a voice whispered the one thing I didn't want to believe. They were hiding something from me. The paper shook in my hands as I folded it back up. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, a cold curiosity settled over me, an urge to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. The next few days were a blur of half-truths and forced smiles. I watched them both carefully, not because I wanted to catch them, but because I needed to understand, needed proof, needed something undeniable before I let my world crumble. Looking back, the signs had been there for months. Times when my husband seemed unusually cheerful after talking to her. Moments when she defended him more fiercely than I did. Times when they shared glances that lasted just a second too long. I used to laugh it off, teasing that they got along too well. Now those memories cut deeper than knives. One evening, I found them standing close together in the kitchen. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing incriminating. But when I entered, they jumped apart subtle, almost unnoticeable, except to someone already drowning in suspicion. My husband smiled at me, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. My sister avoided looking at me entirely. At night, my mind raced. What if I was wrong? What if stress was creating illusions? I hated thinking like this. I hated doubting people I loved. But the note kept replaying in my mind. One morning, I gently asked her if everything was okay, if she was seeing someone. She hesitated before answering, eyes flicking away as she said, "No, not really." The lie tasted bitter in the air, and my heart cracked a little more. Every small detail built a story I didn't want to face. Every silence stretched the distance between us. And every time they interacted, something inside me whispered louder. You already know the truth. You're just too scared to say it. I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. First, I needed certainty, real proof, and fate was preparing to give it to me. It happened on a quiet afternoon, the kind where nothing should go wrong. I had returned home early, exhausted from pretending everything was normal. All I wanted was a cup of tea and silence. But when I walked through the front door, I heard voices soft, hurried, familiar. My sister's voice. And my husband's? They were in the living room. My heart hammered like it wanted out of my chest. I stepped forward quietly, each movement careful, controlled. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. I could see the corner of the couch, part of her arm, his shoes. I didn't want to eavesdrop. I truly didn't. But the tension in their voices pulled me closer like gravity. "I told you we need to stop meeting like this," my husband said, voice low. My breath caught. My palms went cold. "I know," my sister whispered, "but she doesn't suspect anything." I think. The world tilted. Behind my ribs, something broke so softly, I barely felt it at first. Just the echo of pain spreading outward. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall for support. Their words felt like smoke filling a room, slowly choking out the air. I wanted to storm and scream, demand answers. But I couldn't move. My legs were frozen with disbelief. They weren't confessing love. They weren't saying anything explicit. But the secrecy alone was enough. The way they spoke nervous, guilty made everything painfully clear. After a moment, footsteps approached. I hurried back toward the hallway, pretending I had just arrived home. They looked startled when they saw me, exchanging a quick glance they thought I didn't notice. I smiled weakly. "Didn't expect you both here," I said. They responded with excuses. Clumsy ones, and I realized something important. They might lie to me, but their eyes never could. After that day, silence replaced every explanation they refused to give. My husband became distant, almost jumpy, as if he expected me to confront him. My sister avoided me entirely, finding excuses to leave early or not visit at all. Each moment of awkwardness felt like confirmation, carving deep marks into my heart. I didn't confront them, not yet. I needed to see how far they were willing to go. I watched their habits change. My husband guarded his phone like it held state secrets. He stepped outside to take calls. He started sleeping facing away from me, his back a quiet wall between us. My sister, meanwhile, grew strangely emotional. She texted less. She spoke less. When she did speak, her voice carried guilt-sharp, heavy, unspoken. One evening, when she stopped by to borrow something, I noticed her eyes were puffy. Before she could hide it, a tear escaped. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She shook her head. "Just tired." But it wasn't tiredness. It was fear. Fear of truth. Fear of me. She left abruptly. When I closed the door behind her, I leaned against it, breathing through the pain clawing inside me. The silence between us had become its own confession. Later that night, while cleaning up the kitchen, I noticed something on the counter, a small prenatal vitamin bottle. My stomach lurched. I picked it up slowly, scanning the label. It wasn't mine. I stared at it for a long time, 1,000 thoughts screaming through my mind. 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. The truth was no longer a distant suspicion. It was standing in my home. It was growing. And suddenly, the betrayal felt much deeper than stolen affection. It felt permanent. I waited for him to come home that night, the vitamin bottle sitting silently on the table between us like a witness to everything I feared. When he walked in, the look on his face told me he sensed the storm immediately. He hesitated in the doorway, keys trembling in his hand. "We need to talk," I said quietly. His shoulders fell. He knew. I held up the bottle. "Whose is this?" He stammered, searching for a lie that wouldn't come. "It's not what you think. It never is," I whispered. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, avoiding my eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched, pulling at me, tearing at my patience. Finally, he spoke. "She came to me for advice. She's dealing with something difficult. She didn't want to worry you." A clever answer. Soft, almost believable. But I saw the tremor in his voice. "And you couldn't tell me because she asked me not to. So you keep secrets from your wife now?" His face tightened. "It wasn't like that. It is like that." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration all over him. "I didn't want to make things worse. Worse than hiding things with my sister? Worse than the way you talk to her? The way you look at her when you think I'm not watching?" He froze. His breath hitched ever so slightly, and that tiny reaction told me everything. There was something there, something real, something he was terrified to admit. "I'm going to ask you one question," I said softly, painfully. "And I want the truth." He nodded slowly. "Are you involved with my sister?" The room held its breath. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said nothing at all. And that silence shattered me more than any confession could. I went to see her the next morning, unable to carry the weight of unanswered questions any longer. She opened the door slowly, her eyes already filled with something between dread and exhaustion. She didn't even try to fake a smile. "We need to talk," I said. She stepped aside silently, letting me in. The house felt heavy, like it had absorbed every secret she had tried to hide. I didn't waste time. "I found the vitamins," I said. "And I talked to him." Tears pooled in her eyes instantly. Her hands shook as she tried to wipe them away. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. "Then what happened?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay calm. She collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. and I've been scared every day since. My heart pounded painfully. Is the baby his? Her lips parted, trembling. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence filled the room again, heavy, undeniable. I sank onto the chair across from her, my body numb but my mind racing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to disappear. But instead, I stared at her, searching for the sister I once knew. How could you? I whispered. She sobbed harder. I was lonely. I felt invisible. You had him, your job, your happiness. I lost myself. And he was there. He listened. He made me feel valued. That is not an excuse, I said sharply. I know. Her voice was hoarse. I regret it every single day. Regret didn't change anything. Regret didn't return what was stolen. Regret didn't erase the life growing inside her. I stood slowly, my legs barely holding me. I don't know what happens next, I said. But nothing will ever be the same. She looked up at me through tears. I'm so sorry. But sorry was too small for the damage already done. When I returned home, everything felt unfamiliar. The walls, the furniture, even the air, everything carried the residue of betrayal. My husband was waiting for me in the living room, sitting upright like he was preparing for a verdict he already feared. You talked to her, he said quietly. I did. And? And now I know everything. He exhaled shakily, running a hand across his face. I'm sorry. The words felt cheap, overused, completely insufficient. Sorry doesn't undo anything, I said. Sorry doesn't fix a broken foundation. He nodded, eyes reddening. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't mean to hurt you. It happened during a time when we were distant, and don't blame this on us, I snapped. Don't rewrite the story to make your choices look accidental. He swallowed hard. I could see the guilt twisting inside him, but guilt wasn't repentance. It wasn't healing. It wasn't love. I never wanted to lose you, he whispered. You didn't lose me, I said. You threw me away. A silence heavier than any argument filled the room. What happens now? He asked. I don't know, I replied. But I can't breathe in this house anymore. Not with you. Not with these memories. I packed a small bag that evening, not because I wanted to leave, but because I had to. Staying would have suffocated me. Staying would have meant accepting betrayal as normal. When I closed the door behind me, the echo felt like a final heartbeat of the life I once knew. My home wasn't broken. It was gone. I moved in with a friend temporarily, spending nights staring at the ceiling, processing every memory through a new painful lens. Days felt heavy. Nights felt endless. But slowly, quietly, something inside me began to shift. I started journaling, pouring out the storm that had lived inside me for too long. I talked to a counselor who helped me understand that betrayal says more about the betrayers than the betrayed. I reconnected with small parts of myself I had forgotten, my hobbies, my independence, my strength. Meanwhile, the consequences of their choices unfolded naturally. My sister's pregnancy became known within the family, and the disappointment that followed created fractures I hadn't anticipated. My husband tried calling, texting, apologizing in every way possible, but I needed space. Space to feel. Space to heal. People often think revenge is loud, dramatic, destructive. But I learned that the quietest revenge is walking away, refusing to let their betrayal define me, refusing to crumble. One afternoon, while sitting near a lake, I realized something important. I wasn't broken. I had simply been cracked open. And through those cracks, light was finally reaching parts of me I had neglected for years. I decided I wouldn't return to the life that betrayed me. I deserved more than apologies. I deserved honesty, loyalty, peace. So I wrote a message to both of them, a calm, clear message. I told them I wished them healing, but I would no longer be part of their story. My chapter with them was closed. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt free. Months passed, and life began to feel different, not perfect, but clearer. I learned to enjoy simple things again: morning coffee, warm sunlight, laughter with friends. I started new routines, made new plans, and allowed myself to dream without fear of being blindsided again. My sister reached out sometimes, not to pull me back into the past, but to acknowledge the hurt she caused and to take responsibility. I listened when I could. Other times, I stayed silent. Healing isn't linear, and forgiveness doesn't have a schedule. My ex-husband eventually stopped reaching out, a quiet recognition that some wounds can't be undone. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. One day, while walking through a park, I realized I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Not the naive hope that everything will be perfect, but the strong hope that I could build a life better than the one that broke me. I understood now that betrayal didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It stripped away illusions, forcing me to rebuild from truth instead of fantasy. And in that rebuilding, I found myself stronger, wiser, and more at peace. People often ask what I would say if I could go back to the version of me who first found that folded paper. I think I'd take her hand and whisper, "You're going to hurt. You're going to lose things you thought were permanent. But one day, you'll realize you didn't lose yourself. You found yourself." My story didn't end in heartbreak. It began there. And now, every step forward is a reminder that sometimes the home that breaks is the one that frees you. In the end, I learned that betrayal doesn't define who you are, how you rise after it does. I walked through some of the darkest moments of my life, moments I never imagined I would survive. Yet here I am, standing in a place stronger than where I fell. My sister's choices and my husband's actions may have broken the home I loved, but they couldn't break the person I am becoming. If anything, they revealed my strength, my clarity, and my ability to choose peace over chaos. Healing isn't simple, and forgiveness doesn't happen overnight, but I've learned to carry my scars with dignity instead of shame. And now, as I step into this new chapter, I know that my story isn't about what I lost. It is about what I finally found: my voice, my courage, and the freedom to build a life rooted in truth. If you've ever been betrayed, remember this: your heart may crack, but it doesn't have to collapse. You deserve honesty. You deserve respect. And most of all, you deserve a life where your worth is never questioned. Thank you for listening to my story. Tell me, what would you have done in my place?